What's going on, mindful meatheads? Welcome to another podcast. Today, we have a special guest here with us, my inspiration, my father, psychologist, Dr. Brad Sachs.
Hey everybody.
How you doing today?
Great. How are you, Caleb?
Good. Today we wanted to just talk to you about happiness, more on mental health. I thought it'd be a great idea to have a clinical psychologist talk to us about this and get his perspective. So I just wanted to start off today's podcast with like sort of a guiding question and just see where it goes. And let's say that I am right now struggling with a lot of stress and a lot of maybe depression, like it's just not the best point in my life. So I'm wondering from a psychologist perspective, what are some quick things or quick fixes you can do in your everyday life to just enhance your happiness, state of well-being?
It's a great question. I think it depends on what exactly it is that's upsetting you. So I'd say first, if you're two rules of thumb. If you're feeling anxious, the thing that you need to do is approach your fear or the thing that you're anxious about. And if you're feeling down, the thing that you need to do is activate yourself to get yourself to do things that will make you feel a sense of accomplishment or give you a sense of pleasure that you may not have the motivation to do, but if you do them, you'll end up feeling better.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to those people out there that are just really stuck in a rut and they can't seem to get themselves to do anything?
Well, so again, it depends on the issue, but like for instance, if it's anxiety, if you're stuck in a rut, meaning like you've been avoiding certain things over and over again, what I'd recommend is being able to get yourself to face certain fears, but break them up into manageable chunks.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, if you're afraid of talking to people at parties, obviously not something we've been doing much of in COVID, but hopefully soon, but you may want to first practice talking with people that you know well,
Mm-hmm.
and then practice talking to a stranger that seems non-threatening. Say if you're a young person, maybe someone who's quite a bit older that seems friendly and non-threatening to you, and then so on and so forth until you are talking to people, peers, for instance, that create more anxiety, but you've practiced initially so that you're more likely to do that successfully.
Mm-hmm. So it's obviously very clear that you need to practice these things and they're not going to happen automatically. So what would you say to those that kind of just are almost like helpless to themselves and they say like, maybe let's just keep with this analogy of like approaching people at a party, and let's say that they just keep telling themselves, oh, I'm introverted, I don't like to do stuff that makes me anxious, I can't do it, I'm like, this is my personality, like my body won't let me talk to people. Mm-hmm. What would you say to someone like that?
Well, I think first you have to understand that your beliefs are self-limiting. So if you keep telling yourself things like, I can't do this, my body won't let me do this, and I'm not able to do this, then you'll be much more likely not to do it. Good psychology is not the power of positive thinking necessarily, because to say then, I'm the world's most social person, everybody's going to love me, is probably not realistic either.
Right.
You want the power of realistic thinking, which might be something in the middle, like I'll try and talk to some people and chances are nothing catastrophic will happen, and maybe I'll learn something or two about somebody. Mm-hmm. And the only way I would know whether or not I'm able to do that is by practicing. And if I don't practice, then I won't know. And as you had mentioned before about rehearsal, it's a really important part about happiness that people recognize that happiness takes practice, that most people aren't happy just by nature, although some are if they're lucky. But often people become happy because they work at it. Mm-hmm. I often joke and have said to people, patients of mine, for instance, if there was going to be something written on my headstone, I'd like it to be that, Brad was the best at being happy. Mm-hmm. Meaning I knew how to be happy, but not because I had some sort of gift, but because I worked at it.
Right.
I did certain actions, thought certain ways, performed certain behaviors, had certain kinds of attitudes that help me to be happy.
Right. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that people generally have about happiness. I think one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people will say to me, like, oh, I'm just not that happy, like naturally not that happy. I don't really need to. Or they don't really understand the fact that those who are truly happy actually work at it and almost like exercise their mind, whether it's meditation or practicing gratitude. So just going off of that, what are some daily practices or weekly practices that you would say should be like essential to people if they want to be considered a happy person?
Well, I think you named two really important ones. I think one is practicing gratitude. And again, that's not some sort of pop psychology, everything is wonderful all the time. The reason practicing gratitude can be helpful is that, again, our thoughts can often not reflect the reality of our lives. So we might be overly negatively biased about certain things. And if we practice gratitude, what that does is provide us with evidence to determine that our thoughts are not necessarily accurate. So we may say nobody likes me, but if you practice gratitude and you're able to see that, yes, you have friends, then the statement nobody likes me is then by definition false. And so practicing gratitude can provide evidence to help you challenge and change your beliefs. That's what we call cognitive therapy, which is what I practice. The way that you think in large part determines how you feel and how you behave. And that if you can learn how to identify and challenge and change thinking, then you can feel better. And you also have mentioned meditation, and that's another great way of feeling better, because what meditation can help you do is to recognize one set of skills, which is, as I said, to challenge and change and replace thoughts, particularly negative thoughts. But what meditation can do is help you recognize that thoughts and physical sensations and emotions, and feeling states, and all kinds of experiences that we have are just experiences. They're temporary states that come and they go. And so meditation can be a very useful exercise in helping you to sit with those kinds of internal experiences and let them go and not allow them to dominate your thinking and feeling.
And a good analogy, I think, for this, for those of you that are still a bit confused, a lot of meditation teachers, especially out here in the West, when they try to explain the idea of meditation, is to just think of your mind as a clear blue sky. You know, you look in the sky and eventually a cloud will appear, and that cloud is a metaphor for your thought. And when this cloud appears, you could either stare at it and follow it, get in your car, drive down and follow this cloud, and you'll watch it the whole way, or you can just sit there and just stare and you can just watch the clouds pass. So I think this is just an analogy to say that if you just sit and observe your thoughts and just accept them, a lot of us try to push these thoughts out, when in reality, if you push them out, you're going to go then and chase them. But if you just say, you know, right now I'm a little angry. Of course I'm angry. Like, this bad thing just happened to me. It'd be weird if I wasn't angry. I think people are quite hard on themselves and they try to push these thoughts out like, God, I'm so anxious. Why would I be anxious right now? When in reality, like, you're anxious because of this one thing, and you shouldn't beat yourself up about it. Instead, you should just note it. You should say, I'm anxious because of this thing happening, and that's totally okay. Eventually, this feeling will pass, and you just watch the cloud. And as Alan Watts, a famous philosopher that follows a lot of Buddhist teachings, says, there's never a misshapen cloud in the sky. So you'll never look into the sky and you'll say, oh, that cloud is like less and less pretty as this cloud. No, you just look at the clouds and you admire them. So if you were to look at every time you had an angry thought and you said this is a bad thought, then you're just distorting the idea of this cloud. If you just look at your angry thought and see it as just as beautiful as your happy thought, then you'll be able to be content with your thoughts.
Right, or if not, it's just as beautiful, at least just to not judge it, just
Right.
to say it's just another cloud, it's just another thought. And it's really important that people remember that. A thought is just a thought. I can tell myself I'm a gorilla, but that doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
Right? I mean, people have thoughts all the time. Our minds always generate thoughts. Some of them are accurate, some of them aren't accurate. And it's important to remember that you don't have to fall for them hook, line, and sinker. You can determine and decide which thoughts you want to look at and examine, and which ones you don't. And that's a special ability that only humans can have. You mentioned about how people beat themselves up, but that's a blessing and a curse. So as far as we know, humans are the only species that can reflect on their thinking. That's what we call metacognition, to think about your thinking. And so what ends up happening is you feel upset about something, which is what we call a primary problem, like someone is upset with you and you feel badly about that. And then you create, often because you're human, what we call a secondary problem, which is you reflect on the fact that they're upset with you, and then you tell yourself, I'm a bad person because they're upset with me. I must have done something wrong. And then you get caught in that thought,
Right, and
which
it's just a loop.
and it's just a loop. So, you first want to attack the secondary problem and say, hey, I'm allowed to have problems. That's part of the human existence, and I don't need to beat myself up for having them. And then secondly, you can work on addressing the actual problem.
So, just besides gratitude and meditation, what are other techniques that you've seen with patients, or you just know they work really well either through you or just anything that let's say I want to be a happier person. What else would you suggest?
Well, another thing I'd suggest is being able to tolerate uncertainty, because one of the things that creates a lot of angst among people is this idea that I have to have a guarantee of how things are going to turn out. And of course, one of the staples of human happiness is understanding that the universe doesn't revolve around you, that it just is a lot of the time, and that you can't necessarily have things particularly the way that you want. That doesn't mean resign yourself and not try and make things the way you want, but it means having a healthy stance of acceptance that the universe and the world around you is going to do what it's going to do often, and that if you want to be happier, you best practice a lot of acceptance and best practice recognizing that you're not going to have an absolute ironclad guarantee that things are going to work out a particular way. And if you can do that, I think you'd find that you would be able to experience life in a lot less edgy manner and experience it with a lot more pleasure.
And I think that kind of just relates to the Buddhist philosophy and the idea that things are always impermanent and that things are always changing. So for us to fixate on an idea that, we get obsessed with these ideas that, oh, I'm with this person right now and she's making me happy, so I'm going to stay with her forever because she will then bring my happiness. But that's just not how life works. Things are always changing. So for us to rely on something to be constant is just irrational. So
Right, irrational, or just not, I guess, same word. I mean, it's different wording, but same idea, which is not rooted in the reality and the way that things really are. Life is constantly in flux, and if you can recognize that and be okay with that and accept that, then you can find a greater degree of happiness. A practical note on how to do that is, in your self-talk, examine and watch out for words like must and should. That gets people in a lot of trouble. This person and I are friends right now, so we should be forever. I studied hard, so I must get an A. I worked hard to in that job interview, so I must be rewarded with getting the job. And recognizing that these musts and shoulds, these absolutes that we put in life, are just products of our mind. They don't have to happen. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have goals and work towards things, but it's much different between, it'd be nice if this happened, but if it doesn't, I'm be flexible and move forward, versus I must have this, and if I don't, life is miserable and I can never be happy. They're two totally separate things.
I think those are great. Is there anything else you'd like to add? You think that we missed anything, or you wanted to just polish up on some points? Or?
Well, one last thing I'd have is that, like anything else, and getting back to our original point about happiness, is it takes practice and rehearsal. So not to be self-promoting, but watching videos like this, or reading self-help books, or talking to people that are interested in psychology, or just proselytizing on your own to others about what you think happiness is about. And the rehearsal and going over in your mind of these ideas will make them much more real and much more actionable in situations where you need them.
Great. I think that's awesome. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Hope you guys enjoyed. Go ahead and share this and start your journey to be a little bit happier.
Thanks, Caleb.